Funny. Okay, so we are holding on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, page 12b, and
Right.
we learned yesterday a continuation of the Gemara that talked about when a person is fasting the next morning, at what point does that fast begin? And the final version of the Gemara was that it begins. It depends if he goes to sleep or not, but if he goes to sleep, it begins once he falls in, once he's sleeping. And if he's sleeping, he's no longer allowed to eat, even though the fast doesn't really begin till the morning. But once he goes to sleep, it does kick in. Ingmar, of course, had a contradiction from a place that says if he goes to sleep, he could get up and he could still eat. Ingmar's answer was that that's only if he dozed off. If he dozed off, then it's not a problem. He dozed off.
Don't go into the hole. They say that those who enter. No!
Let me mute everyone. Okay, so if he dozed off, then it's not a problem. He's allowed to continue eating. But if he went to sleep, that is a problem because he no longer allowed to eat. The fast kicked in already. And the Gemara wanted to know, what does it mean dozing off? The Gemara answered that it's this state of in between awakeness and sleepiness, where it's called he's sleeping but he's not sleeping, he's awake but he's not awake. And the Gemara goes into that, explains that it means if someone calls him, he'll answer, but he won't know how to think. He's not able to think at that moment because he's really half asleep. But if you remind him of something, he'll remember it. So that's the criteria of dozed off. And that person that dozes off, he would be allowed to continue eating afterwards after he gets up. The fast did not kick in. It will kick in the morning at dawn, but it didn't kick in from his sleeping because he is not fully sleeping. He just dozed off. Then the Gemara talked about brought an opinion of Rav Kahana in the name of Rav, that an individual that accepted a fast on himself, but it's not clear what fast he accepted, meaning he accepted he's going to fast tomorrow, or he's going to fast, making a fast. But does that fast include all the 5 prohibitions of Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur? Or does that fast only include the prohibition of eating and drinking? So because he's not sure, we tell him he has to be machmir, he has to be strict. And he's going to be prohibited even from wearing leather shoes, which is one of the prohibitions on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. We do not wear leather shoes. Leather shoes are considered comfort, and we're supposed to be in a state of inui, of paining oneself, afflicting oneself. And so therefore, on the fast that this guy accepted on himself, it's unclear if he included that or not, included the 5 prohibitions. So the Gemara here says in the Rav Kahana, in the name of Rav, he's usur, he's prohibited in wearing these shoes, these leather shoes, because possibly he accepted on himself the more stringent type of fast, and we don't know. And the rule is that he would need to be machmir, he would need to be strict. The commentaries debate the fact that what legal obligation is this acceptance of a fast day? Does this carry is it considered rabbinic or is it considered biblical? Because this is a law that seemingly we could be more lenient with. Something that's rabbinic, when we are not sure about it, generally the law is a doubt about something rabbinic is permitted. So in a case where we're not sure, I'll give you an example. Someone comes to your house on Shabbos and they bring a bottle of wine. The problem is, you know that they drove on Shabbos. You saw them getting out of their car. Now, they brought the bottle of wine on Shabbos, driving it to you. It's not a problem for you to drink the wine, except for the fact that that wine might have been brought from out of the tchum, out of the boundary of Shabbos. So, for example, if they came from Aventura and brought it to North Miami Beach, that's within the boundary of Shabbos because there's houses all along the way. And so even though they weren't allowed to drive to you, and they shouldn't have, they shouldn't have done that, but it doesn't prohibit the wine. You'd be allowed to handle the wine. But what about if they came from Orlando? They came from Orlando, then there's a good chance that they took the wine from out of the tchum. And in that case, maybe you shouldn't drink the wine or even move it, because you're not supposed to move something that came from out of the boundary of Shabbos. But now comes the question of, they came from Hallandale. Well, if they came from Hallandale, it could be that they took the highway, or it could be they took the streets. If they took the streets, you're probably within the tchum. They took the highway, that might be outside of the housing area. Possibly it could be a problem. You're not sure. They came from Coral Springs. You're not sure if they, it could. There's a good chance. Well, Coral Springs, I guess, is for sure they went out of the tchum. But the thing is, if they come from, I don't know, Eastern Shores, it's unclear if they went out of the tchum. The law is that if you're not sure, you would be allowed to drink the wine. If you're not sure, if you're sure, then it's a prohibition, or a rabbinic prohibition of out of the tchum. But if you're not sure, we're able to be lenient. Yes, Ruvain.
Rabbi, if he lives in North Miami and he's going to your house,
If what?
and he's driving, he lives in North Miami and he's going to your house for Shabbos, and he's driving because he lives a few blocks away, and he says, "Oh, let me go buy a bottle of wine." He bought it in this room in North Miami. And he lives right 5 blocks away from your house, and he's going to drive to your house, but the wine came, are you going to drink that wine on Shabbos?
From my understanding, it is that it's permissible.
Really?
Yeah. Again, you could ask a halachic authority, but my understanding is that it's permissible. And the fact that he did something wrong does not always prohibit you. You know what I'm saying? It's not automatic. It doesn't mean that he's allowed to do that. It means you would be allowed to drink it.
Wouldn't that go on the thing like for an aliyah or something like that? That if you drove to shul and you give an aliyah, that'd be okay. I mean, the wine, you're participating in the wine.
It falls into a different category. But the problem with the aliyah carries with it a different. It's a different situation with giving someone an aliyah if they are machalal Shabbos in public, if they transgress the Shabbos publicly, which there is room for leniency in these type of things nowadays. But in the days, and when it was obvious that someone, when we didn't have people who simply transgressed, but rather they were rebellious and heretics, so to speak. That would have been a different story. But in any event, the bottom line is, I'm just giving an example here. I'm not trying to give you a halachic rendering, but the example that I was giving you was that there's a rabbinic decree about something coming from outside of the tchum that you're not allowed to move it. Daled amis, 4 cubits. You can't move something. So if it came from outside of the tchum, so if you're not sure if it came from outside of the tchum, You would be allowed to because it's a rabbinic, it's a suffix d'Rabbanan. It's a questionable rabbinic law, because we're not sure where it came from. Therefore, you would be allowed to. It's not a problem.
Let me ask a question also.
Sure.
Let's say the person has a disability and we don't know about it, and they drive, to come and visit you. Should we not give them the doubt of their being disabled and not automatically disqualify them, I guess is the question.
So the thing is that we're not talking about, if they did something right or wrong. Our question was more about the wine. Are you allowed to drink the wine? The question of if they did something right or wrong, but driving on Shabbos, if someone has a disability, that you have to ask, is someone allowed to drive if they have a disability? That's really a question in its own right. Generally, they're not supposed to drive. If they have to go to the hospital, if they have an emergency, then anyone, even if they don't have a disability, for sure they could drive. They have to drive. They're obligated to. The question is, is there room for any leniency? And that would be the question. If there's some urgent matter, would there be any room for leniency if they have some type of a great necessity, and if they have a non-Jew driving them because he's doing the work, but is the car using more power because of their weight? This could lead into a lot of different questions. Generally, it's not allowed. The simple answer is, even so, it's like going to shul on Yom Kippur. I can't get to shul, but I want to go to shul. It's Yom Kippur. I can't get there because I can't walk that far. So should I drive or shouldn't I drive? Right? That's the famous question. Now, people. So the simple answer is, Yom Kippur. You don't have to go to shul. Better stay home. But people don't go for that. You can tell it to them, but they're not going to listen. They sort of they know better than the people aren't going to listen. What can you do? So again, we're not judging people. It's not that's Hashem. But is it allowed according to Jewish law? No. You know what I mean? That's the general. That's the thing. But some people don't know any better. Some people they were brought up this way. It's hard for them to change. Everyone has their things. They just can't understand it. People can't understand how you don't go to shul on Yom Kippur if you can't drive. But that's the way it is. There's a lot of women think that they have to go to shul. I don't know. In the olden days, I highly doubt they even had women's sections in a lot of the shuls. And in the olden days, they probably didn't even have So my wife hasn't gone to shul in 20 years. Once she started 22 years, she doesn't go to shul on Shabbos. No problem. But other people who, they think they have to drive to shul because you have to go to shul. Well,
Rabbi,
I don't know. My wife is quite religious. She hasn't gone to shul in 22 years on Shabbos, and she's
Rabbi.
very religious. 1 second, Moshe. Ezra has his hand up.
Yeah, well, there are scooters with grandma switches that are used. That, what I understand, Moshe, can you turn off your washing, whatever you're doing in the background? There are scooters that have grandma switches that I know members of the community have used on Shabbat and the holidays.
Right.
And I think those have been given the proper approvals, so they can be used, but they're expensive.
Right. So to answer your question, Robert, that's a good point. Ezra just mentioned that there are ways. There are certain like wheelchairs or scooters that have rabbinic authority, endorsement of how they're made in a certain way that minimizes makes it either permissible to to use on Shabbos. What the mechanism is that exempts that allows them to be used is a little beyond beyond my understanding, except that they call it a grumma switch, which means that the switch doesn't actually turn it on. It just it causes that at a later time it turns on. Somehow it becomes permissible, and it's not. So for whatever reason, there's some way that the rabbis who understand the mechanics of it and were able to come up with ways of doing it. Now, generally, these things are not permitted for a regular person, but for someone who, because it's a question, it's sort of like a situation where it's a questionable rabbinic thing. So for that person, you could be lenient in this rabbinic law. It ends up not being biblical. It ends up being rabbinical, and they're in great pain, or they need to go somewhere. There's a necessity for them. So generally, that would be, that would be a scenario where there's room for leniency, and they would be allowed to use these type of wheelchairs or on Shabbos and so on. I think Isaac has such a wheelchair, but he's not on today. So anyway, bottom line is, I was just giving an example of rabbinic. So the question to our Gemara, based on that discussion, is accepting a fast. The rabbis seem to understand to be a rabbinic acceptant. In other words, you're accepting on yourself a fast for whatever reason. The rabbis seem to understand that as it becomes a rabbinic obligation. And if it becomes a rabbinic obligation, the question is, so why, if we're not sure if you accepted it on yourself as we're not sure if you accepted a full-fledged fast where you have to keep all 5 prohibitions, or if you only accepted on yourself the eating and drinking part of it, why do we have to be strict and tell you, well, this is seems a little overly strict here. We're telling you can't even wear leather shoes. What do you mean? It's a rabbinic law that I accepted this fast on myself, and maybe I should be allowed to. It's questionable if I'm prohibited in wearing shoes or not. So I should be allowed to. So the commentaries explain that the fact that he uses the term Taanis, it generally refers to a community fast. And because a community fast included the prohibitions of all 5 prohibitions, that would obligate one to be strict. In other words, if it was a real doubt, then maybe we could be lenient. But because he accepted on himself a Taanis, and the law of a Taanis generally refers to a public fast, and we would say that probably this would apply as well. Now, that's an interesting answer that's given. But the thing that I wonder is that applies in Israel, where the fasts officially had rules of being strict. But we said before that in Babylon, there's the fast days were always just prohibited from eating and drinking. So maybe there, the regular Taanis we should be more lenient. So this is my question on this discussion. Another question that I had is, why is this considered a rabbinic law? It's more like a vow. It seems like a vow that he's taking on himself to fast. So does this carry with it only a rabbinic law, or does it carry with it a biblical law? Again, I'm discussing the commentary on this Gemara, one of the commentaries on this Gemara, who says that it's a rabbinic law. So my guess is that it's only a rabbinic law because he's not actually making the vow. He is doing he is accepting on himself like an extra stringency called a Taanis. It's called a nidre mitzvah. He's making a promise to do a mitzvah, but the promise that he's making falls into a different type of category. It's not the typical category of a vow or a promise. It's called a neder ledvar mitzvah, and I believe that's why it's considered a rabbinic law, not a biblical law. A regular vow is a biblical law. You prohibit yourself from food. If you say, I'm not, I will never benefit from something like, let's say he says chocolate, or never benefit from something that you like. So that would be a biblical, you say the proper term for it. So that's a vow. That's a biblical law. It seems that the reason why the commentaries here are calling this a rabbinic law has to do with the fact that you're not prohibiting yourself specifically from a certain thing. You're saying, I'm accepting on myself a mitzvah called a fast. I'm doing this extra bonus type of thing. So it seems that that's the reason why it's considered rabbinic. And even so, our Gemara tells us that if we're not sure if you accept it on yourself, a public fast or a private fast, we consider it, because a public fast was more, the common term for Taanis was used for these public fasts. Therefore, we would have to be strict. What did you say, Ruben?
No, down here on the bottom of the Gemara, it says that I shall be before you in a private fast.
Right. If that's the next statement. That's you're one line ahead of me.
A step ahead of you. All right. Sorry.
It's not the first time. I think you were born before me also.
A little bit.
Anyway, I'm still catching up. Okay. So the little piece afterwards says that what should a person do if he wants to only fast from food? What should he do? So Rabbah bar Rav Shila said he should say what Ruvain just said, that I am going to accept on myself tomorrow, I'm going to be in a Taanis yachid, in an individual fast, not a public fast. This way he clarifies that he's not going to be obligated in wearing non-leather shoes, and prohibited from having marital relations, and from anointing oneself with oil, and taking a shower. He's not going to be prohibited from all that because he clarified it and said it clear. Taanis yachid. Okay, right, that's right. Where we're up to. Yes.
Does water go with food?
Drinking and eating. What?
Okay. So I want to know.
Yeah, there's no lenience. No, there's no leniency of I'm just not eating, but I can drink. In Jewish law, again, we have Avraham with us, who's very big into fasting but drinking. But in the regular fast of the Jewish fast always include both.
The water.
Water and
thing.
yeah. Okay, so the Gemara continues, and we're up to the next little piece here. So that's where we're going to start now. Let me tell you where we're up to. Amru lei. Oh no, we did this little piece. I'm sorry, we did one more little piece. So let me just say it outside then. So the rabbis told Rav Sheshas that they saw that the people were wearing their shoes, and they're going to the place where everyone gathers on the fast day. So it's like, what's going on? Why are the Rabbanan? We see the rabbis are wearing their regular shoes. So Rav Sheshas, they told Rav Sheshas this. Rav Sheshas was ikbid. He was angry. He was makbid. He was upset. And he says, maybe they're also eating. They're wearing shoes. Are they also eating? I guess there's different ways you could read that. one way of reading that is maybe they also ate at night before, and maybe he felt they shouldn't be even eating the night before. He said maybe they ate the night before. But the way I read it was that it's like sarcastic. Oh, they're wearing shoes. Are they also eating? Like but anyway, that's the understanding of that Gemara. What were they thinking? And what was he thinking? Well, they followed the view that in Bavel and Babylon, you're allowed to wear shoes. You just fast from food and drink, but you don't have to keep the other laws, because Ein Taanis Bavel, Ein Taanis Tzibur Bavel. Like in Babylon, they didn't have these extra laws of a Taanis Tzibur. Of course, only on Tisha B'av and on Yom Kippur. So that's why they wore shoes. But Rav Sheshes didn't follow that view. That view was the view of Shmuel, and not necessarily did Rav Sheshes agree with it. Now, which maybe is the answer to my question on the previous Gemara, that the regular fast was a fast of very inclusive of all the prohibitions, and that's why the Gemara says you have to be machmir, because he didn't follow the view of Shmuel. I guess maybe that's the answer. Rav Kahana, in the name of Rav, said you have to be strict. We're not sure if you accepted a public fast or a private fast. He says you always have to be strict. Why you have to be strict? It's a rabbinic law. He says because that's the common fast. It's a public fast. You gotta follow all the 5 prohibitions. So the question I had on it was that it's in Babylon they didn't have these 5 prohibitions for most of the fast. So I would think majority of fasts in Babylon were you didn't have to keep all these rules, extra prohibitions. But it seems maybe that the same way Rav Sheshes didn't agree with Shmuel, maybe Rav Kahana Amarav didn't agree with Shmuel, and they also followed. Maybe that's why they said to be machmir. Maybe could be that's why that they're extra strict, because they also held that you always keep these extra 5 rules. It is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, and the commentaries, at least one of the commentaries brings down on the Shulchan Aruch on the Code of Law, that a Baal Nefesh, a person of high level soul, should be machmir and not take a shower, or not on a regular fast day. We don't follow this, but there is such a chumrah, so to speak, of that's mentioned there, a Baal Nefesh, someone who's of a high level soul, whose soul is revealed. Someone who's on a more spiritual level would follow the extra prohibitions. And to the extent that I think it even mentions this concept of maybe even fasting at night the night before. I'm not sure where I saw that, but that would take it that's taking it an extra step. But besides, for the night before, there are the other prohibitions of like not taking a shower, not to have relations, and so on. That is mentioned. So it's there is such a concept. Okay, so the Gemara continued and said that Abaye and Rava, this is where we're up to. Okay, Abaye v'Rava ma'ili. Now, so let me tell you where we are. Abaye v'Rava is 10 lines from the top of the page. We're on 12b. If you have the art scroll, I'll tell you where we are. We are 12b. 12b1.
The right column.
Abaye v'Rava, the right column. Thank you. That's right. Reuven got it. Abaye v'Rava ma'ili. Abaye and Rava would go into this place called the Bay Tainisa. They would enter this place where they would gather for the fast day. Kimasaimi apanta, while they were wearing this apanta. Now, apanta is a little questionable what this exactly is. It's some type of a shoe that's not perfect. It's missing something. It's either has the top of the shoe missing the bottom, or it's the bottom of the shoe missing the top, or something. But it's Rabbeinu Gershom over here has they would tie the top of the sandal, but the eights under it, they didn't put the bottom piece. I have no idea how they attached it if they had the top piece, but I guess just around their leg probably. But they didn't have the bottom piece. That's the way Rabbeinu Gershom learns. But the bottom line is that they wore a shoe that was not exactly a proper shoe. It was missing something. The way Rashi learns ashkarput, if anyone knows Old French, what it seems that Rashi is saying, the way I have a commentary on the side that says that Rashi that word in Old French means it's a light type of shoe, a sandal that's missing anything on top. So it sounds like the bottom was there and not the top. So anyway, there's two opinions how to learn this, but the point is that they wore a shoe that was not a perfect shoe. It was missing something. And Meremer Mazutra, these other two rabbis, Machalfi Diamina Lasmola, they would have the right foot, the right shoe on the left foot, and the left shoe on the right foot. Rabbanan Devei Rav Ashi, the rabbis in the base medrash of Rav Ashi, these rabbis, Nafki Kior Chayu, they would go out the normal way. They didn't do anything special. Savri, because they held Kihad Amar Shmuel, like this, that Shmuel says, Ein Taanis Tzibur Bebavel, there is no public fast in Bavel. This is what I quoted before. We learned this before, but it's now repeating it in our Gemara, saying that these rabbis held, like Shmuel, that there is no public fast in Bavel, Ela Tisha B'Av Bilvad, only Tisha B'Av. And because of that, which we've explained, that it had to do with the fact that either they in Bavel they didn't need rain, and that could be the reason why they didn't have these extra stringency fasts, or because in Bavel they didn't have people with smicha to prohibit the community in such a strict fast. But anyway, in Bavel they only did Tisha B'Av. That's the way Shmuel holds, and that's what these rabbis of the Beis Medrash Rav Ashi followed. Now the question is, does this Gemara mean that Abai and Rava and Meremer and Marzutra, the other rabbis that we just mentioned, that they did some type of a shinoi, a change, did they also hold of Shmuel? And that's why they actually wore shoes. They just were missing something. They did wear shoes. See, what's a little vague here is that they did wear shoes. Like, for example, even Meremer and Marzutra, they put the right shoe on their left foot, but they did wear leather shoes, and they put the left shoe on the right foot. But so the fact that they wore leather shoes makes it sound like maybe they weren't so strict and maybe they followed Shmuel. And if they did follow Shmuel, that would mean that they didn't keep the law of the prohibition of shoes. Why did they do this little change, the shinoi? It sounds like they wanted to be a little extra, go a little beyond the letter of the law. But did they wear leather shoes? Yeah, they followed Shmuel. You're allowed to wear leather shoes. They did a little extra, so they wore they wore it on the wrong foot, or they missed the bottom piece, but they had the top piece. So they had the top piece, or they had the bottom piece, but they missed the top. Whatever it was, they did something a change, but they actually followed Shmuel that you're really allowed to wear leather shoes. That's one way of learning. Or you could say no. Only the rabbis of the Beis Medrash of Rav Ashi followed Shmuel, and the other rabbis actually held that it's prohibited to wear leather shoes. So then why did they wear leather shoes? If it's prohibited to wear leather shoes and they don't follow Shmuel, so how did they wear leather shoes? So what it seems from this is that if you need to walk outside with leather shoes, you would be allowed to if you do a shinui. If you do something with a change, with a, you do it in a different way, a non-comfortable in the normal way of wearing them, in an uncomfortable way, and in not the regular, not the norm, that would be allowed. Based on this understanding, one of the commentaries in Shulchan Aruch, in the laws of Yom Kippur, says that if it's raining outside on Yom Kippur, he says you would be allowed to switch your shoes, maybe to the other feet, in order to not transgress, so to speak, the law of wearing leather shoes on Yom Kippur. But at the same time, you need to do something because it's pouring rain and it's muddy and who knows what. So one of the commentaries in Shulchan Aruch, I believe it's the Magen Avraham, brings such an opinion that it's allowed, and it's based on this understanding that that these rabbis held that you're not allowed to wear leather shoes, but yet they wore leather shoes, but they did it with a change, because doing it with a change, in an uncomfortable way and in a change way, that would be allowed and not considered that you are transgressing the law of wearing leather shoes on Yom Kippur. At least in this case of great need, it was a case of great need. Of course, we're talking about raining and something like that. So this would be a source to permit it. Ruven, did you want to say something?
Yeah, there's some people back home that they used to put pebbles in their shoes to be uncomfortable.
Right. So that would be like an extra level of affliction. But you know what that reminds me of? There is a law if a person is in avelus, when a person is in mourning and they need to go somewhere and they have to wear shoes when they're traveling far, they would stick actually something inside their shoe, like dirt. They would put dirt in their shoe, and that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So that law, you're right about that. That it's that there is such a law about putting dirt in one's shoe and not transgressing the law of mourning. But I wrote this to someone actually. He said, you can wear leather shoes while in transit after the burial until you get home, but once you're inside, you should just wear socks or Crocs or other non-leather shoes. If you're a passenger in the car, you should remove them during the drive. Wear them only when you're walking outside. Even then, it's preferable to put some earth in the shoes. So this is a law that applies to Avelus. Yes, Moshe, you wanted to say something.
What about the Kohanim? If they have dirt between if they're stepping on dirt and they're going to dip them, how does that?
Yes. Say that again. Well, you're worried that the Kohen is going to head from the fast. During a fast day.
Yeah, I mean
that they don't wear shoes. The Kohanim, they have no problem. We're talking about if you're wearing shoes, how to get around it. Kohanim didn't have a problem. Yes, Mordechai.
Yes, for some reason I'm reminded of that story about that the wise men of said that we should do something to make the mayor more recognizable in public. And so one of them said, let's have him wear a pair of gold-plated shoes. And then another one of them said, but the streets of them were frequently muddy. So another one says, okay, so he'll wear galoshes over the gold-plated shoes. And one of them said, but then nobody's going to see the gold-plated shoes. So one of them said, okay, so we'll cut a hole in the galoshes so they can be seen. And then another one said, but then there's the mud problem again. So another one said, we'll take straw and plug up the hole.
Aha. And that it ended there, or did it continue?
Yeah, I think that's
it ended there. There's only so far it can go. All right. So yeah, so this is brought in the laws of Yom Kippur, such a concept. It's based on the Shalah. So actually, it's a Shalah. The Magen Avram brings it down. So the question is, so the Abaye and Rava, they say, wore shoes. These shoes were not a problem. It seems like the problem was Meremer and Marzutra. They wore the regular shoes. They had regular shoes. That was a problem, but because they switched it around, it wasn't a problem. Yeah, so it seems like it's broad. I don't know what the final conclusion of all the latest authorities are, but there is such an opinion brought in the Magen Avram and Shulchan Aruch, which is a accepted view. But then again, most people nowadays, I don't know if it would apply because there's so many other options. In the olden days, you had people were poor and they had very little options to wear other shoes. Now on Yom Kippur, you could wear sneakers, you could wear Crocs, there's so many different options that I don't know that you're not going to see people wearing their left shoe on the right foot. I don't think in today's day and age. But it seems like based on that understanding of the Gemara, it could be permissible. Okay, so now we're up to the next piece of Gemara. And the next piece of Gemara says that Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Yehuda said the name of Rav, Leiva Adam Tainisa Upereya. A person could borrow his fast and pay it up. Now, what does that mean? He could borrow his fast and pay it up. So what that means is that you would be able to decide in the morning of the fast and say, you know what? Today's not a good day for me. I accepted yesterday that I'm going to fast today, but I don't feel good. I'll fast a different day. You could pay it up. And it seems like he has an excuse. He has a reason, maybe have to do with a health reason. Other commentaries bring down that it could have to do with a Sudas mitzvah, that there's a special mitzvah today, or there's a special reason someone of great importance has arrived and I should participate in the community event that's honoring him. And other commentaries say there doesn't have to really be a reason. Now, the question really is a little the question that we should ask on this is that you accepted the fast on this specific day. How are you allowed to just say, "Oh, you know what? I'll switch it to another day"? What do you mean? This is like some level of acceptance of a commitment. You can't just back out of your commitment like that. So so some of the commentaries want to say that it's talking about a case where you didn't specifically make a vow about this day, but rather you made a vow you're going to fast 10 days this month. And then yesterday you said that I want one of those days to be tomorrow. So yesterday in davening, you didn't really accept on yourself the vow. The vow was a vow from before, and it was a vague vow. It didn't specify what day. And all you did yesterday was you said that tomorrow I want that vow to apply. So in such a scenario, it would be permissible. Now, what would happen if you specifically said, I am fasting tomorrow, I'm accepting to fast tomorrow? Then then you wouldn't be able to do this whole thing. Now, so that's some of the commentaries want to explain it that way, which makes it sound much more understandable how you could like back out of such a vow. The other understanding is that even though you did say, I am accepting on myself to fast tomorrow, and you even such a case, we find similar laws regarding tzedakah that if you said, I'm giving this coin to tzedakah, but you didn't give it yet, and now you need it for something else, that you would be allowed to borrow it and pay it back. So we find a similar concept when it comes to another type of mitzvah, similar to a fast, that you sometimes are allowed to borrow it. And therefore, the Gemara understands that the Gemara understands that it would be similar to that law of tzedakah, that you could do the same thing. So that's what. So again, so there's a few commentaries over here how we're talking, what type of scenario we're talking about to permit someone to be able to do this and just push aside his fast and choose another day to fast. Yes, Ezra.
I can understand if you say, I'm going to give $10 to tzedakah. But if you say, I'm going to give this $10 bill, in which you're basically identifying which bill it is,
right?
Then unless you know for sure that you'll be able to get that $10 bill back, you have a problem. You understand what I'm saying?
So you're asking that the actual coin becomes hegdish.
Right. If you remember when people go away or go to Israel and you give them money to be shaliach.
Right.
You know, I've been asked many times, this particular dollar, or can I switch it out for any other dollar? And so I'm asking the question, you know, if you're not identifying the specific coin, then I can understand what you're saying. But if you do identify the specific coin, then you have a problem.
Let me see, 1 second. Let me see if I can pull up. It's Yeridea chapter 259. And it says over there that you could give a different one in its place, even though you did say, I understand you have a good question, Ezra, but it seems if we look up chapter 259 in Yeridea, let me just pull it up here. Chapter 259 in Yeridea, such a concept. Halacha, Yeridea. $259. Okay, so it's the beginning of this chapter, 259 in Yeridea. A person who says this coin should go to tzedakah, or he says the second option is what you would like, is that he says, I am going to give tzedakah, a coin to tzedakah, but it doesn't say which. So it has both options here, but then you set it aside. And you're like planning on giving that one to the tzedakah. So before the gabbai gets it, you would be allowed to change it over, either to switch it for another coin, or to borrow it for yourself, or to lend it to someone, and you could pay back with a different one in its place. And the same thing would apply if you donated vessels. You could sell them in front of 3 experts in evaluation, give the money to tzedakah. Once it reached the hands of the gabbai, the person in charge, then he's not allowed to borrow it. You can't lend it for him, for other people, for the gabbai. However, if it will benefit the poor, if the gabbai keeps it and spends it, then because it'll cause other people to want to give, because now he doesn't have So the gabbai is allowed to borrow it, pay it back, because tzedakah is not like hegdish. It's not like a sanctification for the Beis Hamikdash, and you are allowed to benefit from it. And you can't do business with tzedakah, which is supposed to be given to the poor. But money for money, switching it, but if you do business with it, it might not have money to give them. But tzedakah, that's not going to be divided. If there's tzedakah that's meant to be like a, I forget what they call a type of fund that that you don't use the principal, you only use the interest. Yeah, what do they call that fund? It's a type of fund. It's I forget what it's called. There's a term for it. So there's such a thing. You would be allowed to do business with that tzedakah. It's that would be allowed. So anyway, this is an interesting halacha, which might change the way we do shliach mitzvah. Ezra, I'm not sure. Are you called a gabbai? I don't know if you're called a gabbai. If someone asks you to bring money to Eretz Yisrael, and you're the shliach mitzvah, could be that you're allowed to. Again, this is the Shulchan Aruch. There might be commentaries on it, but this is what I would, this is what I would start with if I wanted to look it up and see,
Rabbi?
what the commentaries say. But this is straight Shulchan Aruch, so I didn't really add anything.
But people that are more knowledgeable than me have asked me when I tell them, listen, you're going so and so, so here's some you be my shaliach, etc. And I've been asked many times this particular, and
the only thing I could tell you is, I would tell you, you should ask them if they've seen chapter 259 in Yeridea when they say this.
Look, at the time when things are doing, you're doing it because you want to make sure that they arrive safely, etc. And you give them the money. Nobody's going to go around and say, "Oh, by the way, go and look at chapter 259 of Yeridea." That to me is sort of like it's a ludicrous statement to be made at that time. My concern is that they arrive safely.
My point is, if they start telling you, I want you to give this coin to tzedakah and not don't switch it, you could tell them, you might want to look up chapter 259 of Yeridea. But anyway, I think you have what to, if you want to look into it more, you have at least the source, chapter 259. But
Rabbi, it was a discretionary fund, I think is the term you were trying to find, discretionary fund.
No, I don't think that's the term. No, there's a I'll tell you what it is. It's called an endowment fund. Endowment fund, if I'm not mistaken. That's where they don't use the actual.
Right, they don't touch, as they say, the corpus of the money, the body of the money.
They give you the interest.
Right. They only live off the interest. So that would be a case where the tzedakah money is allowed to be used for investment purposes. Okay.
Rabbi,
someone else, David. Yeah, you want to say something?
What about the Rebbe dollars? How would that fit into this? Because there, it's a question of the person wants to actually hold on to the Rebbe dollar, but he wants to change it over for the value.
Right. So that would seemingly be the source. This would be a source for what people do is they switch it over. Right. This would seemingly be a very good source that you could do it. The other point is that when the Rebbe gave $1 for people to give to tzedakah, it's sort of like he meant it for you to, you can keep this $1 and switch it. So it even if it would be normally not acceptable, in the case of the Rebbe dollar, it probably would be acceptable because it was clearly understood that that's what people are going to be doing, and that's what the Rebbe was allowing and understanding that people are going to do. But it seems from this that it's allowed. Now, again, this is just looking at the initial chapter in Shulchan Aruch. It does need to be looked into more, and just to make sure that we're covering, because what Ezra said does make sense logically, that maybe it should depend on if the specific coin was specified. This is going to be for tzedakah, but in any event, generally it seems like that's it. In other words, if they don't specify and say you have to give this to tzedakah, then it would seem like it should be acceptable for you to do whatever as you wish, that's what it sounds like from the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so we are going to continue here. So the statement in the Gemara was, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav said, a person could borrow from his fast and pay it back. In other words, you could decide not to fast and decide to fast on a different day. And of course, this would all depend on this whole discussion that we had. Do you have to have a good excuse? Does it have to be a health issue? Could it be if a very important person came to town, you want to participate? Could it be, does you have to have a good reason? And maybe if you don't have any reason, you could still do it. Different opinions in the commentaries. And how did you accept your fast? Did you specify what day? But basically, you're allowed. There are scenarios where it's going to be allowed for you to choose to switch your fasting. When I said this statement in front of Shmuel, the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, that you could do that. Well, so Amar Li, he said to me, what he did was it considered a real a regular vow, delay sagi, delay mishalim, that he can't get away without fulfilling it. He accepted on himself that he's gonna pain himself, and if he's able to, then he will pain himself. In other words, and fast. If he's not able to, so he's not able to. So he's not going to be obligated to pain himself. So what this means, and the simple understanding of what Shmuel is saying, there's two versions here. We'll soon see. There's the Ika Damri, but this version is Shmuel thinks that this is Shmuel understands that that what Yehuda Amar Rav said is not exactly correct, because you have to pay it back. You don't even have to pay it back. Why should you have to pay it back? This was like a neder. He said he accepted on himself. If he's able to, to pain himself, fine. If he's not able to, so he's not obligated. So he shouldn't even have to pay it back. This is the simple understanding of this first view. And the Rashi here is a little complicated, because it sounds like in Rashi that he would have to pay it back. But if you follow the Hagois Habach, the way the Bach switches the wording there, there seems to be like a little discrepancy in Rashi. It fits with the he takes out a word, he changes it to Yoima. But that's the simple understanding. And then the Gemara says another version. Ika de Amri, some say that Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rav, Loiva Adam Tainiso Yipav, a person could borrow the fast and pay it back. And that was Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav's statement. And when I said in front of Shmuel, Amar Li, Pshita, he told me, obvious, you could do that, which sounds like he agrees with him completely. Lo Yehei El Neder. It's just like a neder, that a neder, a vow, miloi motzi the shlume umezo lemachar uliyamachvina. Can't you go and pay it back or complete it the next day or a different day? So the same thing should be with fasting. So basically, there's question over here: do you need to pay it back or don't you need to pay it back? The first version made it that it's a machlekes, it's an argument between Rav and Shmuel. The second version is that everyone agrees that you would need to pay it back. So we'll try to continue this tomorrow. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good day, everybody.
Good day, guys.